the choices that the people of Kenya did make on the 9th of August. Had it not been for this choice, the country would not be where it is today. Because the country has mutilated all the gains that came with the 2010 constitution. What we contemplated to have when we all went and voted for the new constitution, we expected and anticipated to have a country that is governed by the rule of law. We expected to have a country where transparency would be the order of the day in the manner in which the government conducts its affairs. We expected that accountability would be the standard and the cardinal north. We expected that we shall elect men and women of integrity who foot the bill under Chapter 6 of the Constitution. We also expected that we will have servant leadership. A servant leadership is one where the people takes the lead and the elected persons follows therein after. But what we are having in this regime, which I'm saying is a curse that has been bestowed upon us, is a regime that has decided to mutilate all the gains. All the gains that we had are down to the drain, and people must come up to defend the gains that we had. I am not surprised that Zakayo Arap Tamar has never involved himself in thinking on how a country can be governed by the rule of law. That's what you can see. Immediately he came into power, the first that he ever said was Public-Private Partnership Act. We must remember that now the offending provisions were brought by Zakayo Arap Tamar through the amendments in 2023. In 2014, 2015, the act was still in existence. There were projects that were still ongoing under the same Public-Private and Partnership Act. But there was no this hue and cry because the processes were open to the members of the public. The processes were initiated through the requisite public participation. The act was used to initiate new projects, not the projects that are already going on. One example I would give where the Public-Private Partnership Act was initiated and used was the Amu coal power plant, the one that is just about to be initiated in Lamu. That was a Public-Private Partnership Act. The other one, of course, is the expressway. Is a Public-Private Partnership Act project. The other one that never took place was to be the Mui Coal Basin. Why were there no hue and cry? Because the processes were open, they were transparent, they conformed to the dictates of the act, and before the act was assaulted by Zakayo, the act conformed to the desires, the wishes, and the aspiration of the people. It is the amendment of the act that has now opened up ongoing projects like the JKIA up for grab. So the amendments were mischievous in the first instance. They were meant to make sure that even the going concerns projects like the JKIA can be available for grab by private partners. I want to repeat and say that initially the act was only dealing with new projects. A private partner would be invited, and you could even initiate privately. If you go and identify a project and you realize that an investment can be done here, for example, coal power plant, or for example, the wind power generations, you could initiate and you pump your own money into it. And you build it, operate, and transfer to the government upon the...
Wakilindego, I seem to be losing you. But
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was just saying I seem to be losing you. And as you also explained that, I see the Senator Tarange has also put a bill that was getting its first reading today that we should extend this presidential torment for up to 7 years.
Yes, that is the issues we are dealing with. Let me finish up on the Public Partnership Act and tell our listeners that it was amended in 2023 to make it available, the already existing projects available for grab. That's where you can see JKIA has been initiated through the private initiation, which cannot apply on a project where Kenyans have invested their monies in. Private initiated proposal only happens and takes place when the investor has identified a new project where he can put his money in. And those are some of the issues we are raising in court with Tony Gasho. And to mention that, I don't know what people are calling, I'm sorry. Mentioned that Jubilee has also been joined in the suit. Kioni will be submitting on the same. DAPK has been joined and Wiper, because you want to give it that particular impetus. So we are having impunity leading this country. People are amending the laws to suit their circumstances. People are amending the laws to suit their desires and their needs, to grab the resources of this country. That's why you can see somebody like Cheragay can propose to amend the constitution. But the good thing is, presidential term limit cannot be amended by parliament without the involvement of the people. Those are some of the protected provisions under Article 255 of the Constitution, which the Constitution says that you cannot amend to increase or decrease the presidential term limit or the term of parliament without consulting the people. So whatever he is initiating is an act in futility, because we shall reject it in a referendum. Or unto you, if those people who are in Azimio, who have now joined as a government, decide to support the process. But we shall still put and stay guard to the processes so that we may defend this constitution. I must tell our listeners this evening that this constitution must be protected by we the people. The state has abandoned us. The state organs have abandoned the process. In any case, the state organs, both non-state actors and some state actors, are being used to perpetuate this mischief of amending the laws to suit their circumstances. So we must stay vigilant. And I want to borrow the words of Tony Gashoka, that all hands must be on deck. One of the issues that we redeem this country is that we must make sure that we file as many suits as we can before the High Court through the public interest litigations, the PIL. They are open for grab. It's only the opportunity that we have to defend our democracy, to defend our rule of law, and to defend our institutions. Coming to the Privatization Act, which was declared unconstitutional yesterday by the High Court, we must understand that the Privatization Act is different from the Public-Private Partnership Act. The Public-Private Partnership Act is still intact as amended by Zakayo Arap Tamar last year. And therefore, if we do not rise up and defend the Constitution, that act will still be available for application in perpetuating mischief by Zakayo. And that is why when we were in court on Monday, we sought leave of the court to amend our petition so that we can challenge the constitutionality of that act, especially in circumstances where the act is being used by the regime to grab the already existing projects where Kenyans have invested their resources in. Fortunately, we were granted leave to make those amendments, and Tony will be speaking on the political impact of it and the social impact of our case at the most opportune time, so that we are able to bring this to life. People have generated a lot of interest around that particular petition, and the good thing is that we are having very, very strong representations, Tony Gashwako will speak to it again, of the individuals who want to support the petition. So let us not start jubilating that the JKIA will be saved by the declarations of unconstitutionality of that act that took effect yesterday. It is not within, the project has not been initiated through the defunct or the defunct or the impugned act. It has been initiated through the amendments that Zakayo brought. And that is why we must continue to stay put and push to make sure that the project itself is declared a nullity, ab initio, by the court. So we are still not out of the woods. We must stay vigilant and continue to push on this particular agenda. On the issues of Sergei, as I pen off, it's ridiculous that somebody can be thinking of how to increase the presidential term limits when we are already in the woods, when you're already having these messes being done. But they are testing the waters. So we must have a strategy in which we must deal with the proposed amendments. Remember, these are not the amendments. These are not amendments that can be initiated by Parliament alone without involving the people. And that is why we, the people, must come out and defend this constitution. I keep on saying, even if you do not have any reason to defend this constitution, you must come and defend it for the future generation. So that if you feel you do not need it, let us not mutilate it for the next generation. And that's the duty that we must bestow unto ourselves, is a commitment and an obligation, is a creed that we must take oath to defend and to stand with. Thank you, Tony. I'll still remain available for consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Akili. I want to bring in Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. He was very vocal about the impeachment of the vice president. And he said, this is kipindi too. It's like a distraction from the major heist. Jeremiah Kioni, thank you very much for coming in today. What are your thoughts on that? And why do you think kipindi?
And let me start by saluting all that are with us and those also who are not with us. I've listened to that eloquent presentation by Wakili Degwa. He got into the trenches ahead of very many people, and he has maintained the shield. I admire his energy. Hata kilo inaonekana mwili inapungua kidogo, lakini Mwenyezi Mungu ataongeza wakati yake. And of course the others, kina Tony, I see all these other great Kenyans who are listening to us. I totally agree with the presentation that has been done by Wakili. You remember a little earlier on in the term of this regime, it was looking like we actually, I don't think we have completely come out of the woods. We were being overwhelmed by the mistakes that were being committed by every office that is that was created by them. To a point where, at one point, we were wondering what is it that we focus on, and what is it that we may even allow to pass, so that we are not completely lost. But it's a joy to see that with the coming on board of the Gen Zs, now all issues is like Tony may have said, it's like all systems go. We have people fighting from all corners and everywhere, and it is bearing fruit, because you can actually see the kind of judgments that we are getting, and especially from the High Court. And we must also commend and thank the High Court for their zeal in protecting the Constitution. But this regime is have also realized that Kenyans wamewagudua, and they are now on a survival mode, self-preservation mode. And we must be careful so that they don't keep throwing bones at us, and we run after the bones and lose the focus. And that is why I was saying, if you look through the impeachment of proposed impeachment or talked about impeachment of Gachagua, listen to people, you could actually tell that it is something that has been schemed, thought through. Maybe initially they may have thought that it could work, but then it came out as a good plan, a choreographed thing, where at a given stage you now had Boss Chorei saying, I am the one going to be in charge of this process. In fact, you, William, stay out of it. I will conduct it to the end. Instead of us having the impeachment motion on the floor or being tabled in the National Assembly, Mugatana appears through the window with a censure motion in the Senate, and he's not a naive lawyer or advocate. He clearly knows that this is a process that should start at the National Assembly. Then all of a sudden, you see him in the evening having found his way to go and say, sorry, I apologize for all these things. If you look at the totality of all that and you look at the numbers that are supporting Achagua, those who are not supporting him, the utterances, you can actually see a kipindi. It is something that has been thrown to us to keep us busy, while they see what is it that mystique. And I want to say this with a lot of respect to every other community in this country. There will be a lot of focus on the mountain because of this solid almost 7 million block. And it is the one that he used to get into power. He is so scared about it if we were to, the block was to, move to another basket. And that is why I'm saying it is important that we remain focused on what is it that we want to achieve. The end game for all this is to get the whole regime home. It is what the guys in the matatu industry said, kuva dereva kuva makanga. And you will realize that there is a little bit of disorientation on this issue of the impeachment when Kenyans have now said, mulikuja pamoja, edeni pamoja. If there is an impeachment of one, there must be impeachment of the other, and both of them must be impeached at the same time. Literally saying, get rid of the system at the same time. I have heard what you have talked about, an intended proposal to amend the constitution to extend our pain through the, extending the term of those who are already in office. I want to say that while it is a very dangerous thing, they are not that naive. They know that it is something that cannot see the light of day. But it will occupy our minds, and again, if we lose focus, they will continue allowing the dirty corruption scandals, deals to pass through. They will continue implementing them, but also removing us from the ball where we are saying, let's focus on what is this that will take them home. And I like what the lawyers are doing, myself included, in court. There is a case, I didn't hear Degwajiro talk about it. There is now a petition that is before the courts, and Degwa was informing me earlier in the day. I was it yesterday or today, I think it was yesterday, not earlier in the day, yesterday late in the evening, that the mention of the same case comes on the 29th of October. And the gist of the matter is that we would want to move the court to allow for a referendum so that we now, Kenyans can either vote for or against the continued management of affairs by the KK regime. That is a move that will keep them very scared and on a survival mode. That kind of a petition, while all the others are very important because we must safeguard our national assets for the reasons that were again adduced by Degwa, plus many others. While that is very important for to continue being done, we will need to keep them. We will need to allow the Kenyans to keep their focus on them, so that the resolve to set them home must always remain on them, because the eventual remedy for all the difficulties that we are in, it is the absence of KK in the management of our affairs, either politically, economically, socially, or culturally, whichever other way. And so I want to agree with what others have said and ask that a case like that one where we are now saying we want to impeach the two, that will again bring the Kenyans together and they remain focused so that in the event that we have to wait until the year 2027, we get there when you are still united and with one resolve that these are people we must send home. And if the date comes earlier, again, it is a decision of getting them home, perhaps with a bit of, at times, not the best thing to say when you are in leadership, almost without quite bothering who is this other person we are bringing on board. Because the damage that is going to be caused by these guys, if they are let loose, it's a damage that cannot be remedied by the generations that we have on board already. They would have to wait for other generations that have not come to this planet Earth. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. Someone has sent me something very interesting on my DM, and they asked that about the JKIA deal, what are the term limits and what are the term limits? And I also asked me about the Ford Foundation. We seem to have a president who's, when he's in Kenya, Ford Foundation is an enemy. When he meets the Ford Foundation, they are a friend of democracy. So do we have a president who speaks according to where he is? Does he tell you what you want to hear when he's with you? You know, so I don't know I don't know whether Ndegwa Njuru can tell us.
I can only mention about the Ford Foundation, with your permission, and others can inform. Just a quick one to see how humiliating having these guys in leadership is. Unknown to us, when William claimed that Ford Foundation were the ones who funded Gen Z and the demonstrations, the American government made it very clear to him that short of himself going to the US and making a personal apology to the leadership of the Ford Foundation, it is a really done deal between us and them. So while he told us that he was going for UNGA, this was one of the humiliating things that he has to do. He had to go before the leadership of Ford Foundation and apologize for having dragged them in the manner that he did. That is your president. I am not sure that he was not made to kneel. If the other time he was given a seat to sit on by Biden, who knows whether he knelt when they were behind doors. But it was a really humiliating thing for us as Kenyans when your own president is summoned to other capitals to go and apologize for having made some reckless statements that humiliates us as a people. And of course, doesn't help us in improving the international image of all those of our people who are within us and outside of our country. That's a bit I wanted to mention about Ford Foundation, having gathered that information from somewhere.
Thank you very much. Now, I seem to be getting a lot of questions in regards to you. People are asking, now we have Adani who's taking over not only JKIA, he's taking over Chief, he's taking over Kentraco. Is this a case of Adani almost becoming Kenya's economy and the Kenyan economy becoming Adani? And how can he be stopped from going into Chief and Kentraco and all that? Because people are saying, if you stop him with JKIA, is Chief and Kentraco still going on?
Thank you once again, Tony. And I cannot thank Honorable Jeremiah Kioni for that able submissions. And he has given the perspective of the person we are dealing with. It's not just the country and the resources of this country that are at stake. And Honorable Kioni, thank you for that compliment. I convinced myself from the day William Ruto took oath, or from the day the Supreme Court announced that we had lost the petition, that the country had taken the wrong trajectory, and the country has been placed under the hands of Washosho and the Wanogo of the 1990s. And that's the tragedy this country is currently facing. I was about to say that it's not only the resources of this country that are at stake. Even our own sovereignty is at stake. Our sovereignty has been defiled by these two guys And that is why the hashtag impeach both must be the rallying call. When you imagine a person in the name of a president making such kind of defamatory claims against an institution, then the next day you see him shaking hands with the same individuals he was accusing, you ask yourself whether this person can qualify under Chapter 6. Chapter 6, if it were to be followed, it would clean this country and this mess. That a leader must be able to give statements that breathe confidence into the office he or she holds. What we are getting today is that the office of the presidency in this country has been defiled by Mr. William Ruto Arap Tama. And I've also heard people calling him Ananias. He has completely, by his deeds and actions, defiled that office. And he has not just defiled that office, he has even defiled the Constitution itself. Mr. William Ruto has not initiated a de jure attempt to amend the Constitution in its entirety, let alone the shenanigans by Sergei. But he has de facto, in a de facto way, amended and suspended our Constitution. Because whatever actions that he's taking are not backed up by our constitutional doctrines and principles. He has negated and declined to follow the guidelines as indicated by the Constitution. Remember, there's something called the competitive authority in this country. It was created under Article 46 of the Constitution that is supposed to create healthy competitions in the manner in which people conduct their affairs. There is also the competition authority that is paid by taxpayers that's supposed to make sure that in the economic spheres there is healthy competition and that one institution or one individual is not given undue advantage as against others. So you must want to ask yourself, what has happened to this institution that one person can take and grab the entire of the country? You grab Kentraco, you grab the airport, you grab the social health scheme. One individual. Where is the voice of the competition authority that's supposed to guard these misnomers? So we are having a serious breakdown of the rule of law. If the rule of law was to be followed as it ought to be, then we should be hearing the voices of the persons holding the offices in those particular authorities. But because we are being led by rogue president and a rogue deputy president, then we must embrace ourselves and come out and actively participate. That is why we are saying, and I want to just add on what Honorable Jeremiah Ken was indicating, that since we have lost confidence in the manner in which the institutions of this country are ran, and since we have come to a conclusion that these institutions cannot be held to account to defend our democracy and our rule of law, then we, the people, must take charge of making sure that we go ahead of these institutions and remind that these institutions were created to benefit the people of Kenya and to execute their functions. That is to say that if Parliament is supposed to initiate the impeachment of Mr. Rigathi Gachagua, the former DO, and initiate the impeachment of Mr. William Ruto Arap Tama, and they have failed, then we are asking the High Court, are we so desperate? Are we just going to remain helpless? Or can we exercise our powers under Article 1 of the Constitution and conduct a referendum to impeach these individuals? Remember, the member of parliament can be recalled by the people through the procedure created by the Constitution. But when it comes to the executive, we are told it's only parliament, that is the National Assembly, and the Senate that can initiate the process. That means declothing us of our ability to directly check on the person that we once elected. So we're asking ourselves, and we're asking the High Court, did we donate all the powers? Or can these residual powers, which say that the people can exercise their sovereignty directly, also include recalling the president or impeaching the president? That is a subject that is before the High Court. I wish to rest there, and I thank you.
Thank you, Wakili Ndegwa. Now, as I bring in Tony Gashoka, I see Farah and Daniel, your hands are up. But you be next. As I bring in Tony Gashoka, someone sent a question to me also on my DM and is asking, there seems to be an affinity between Ruto and Asians, especially the name Adil keeps on coming up, who just hired his son. Tony Gashoka, what is your input, given that you are the one who has filed the case in regards to JKIA?
Anthony, if this was a football match or the World Cup, we actually would be now entering the round of 16 because we had preliminary matches where Zakayo has overwhelmed the country through the rule of the gun and the use of the bullet in killing our people. I note that the Kenya human rights bodies, including Article 19 and the Red Cross and all of them together today were issuing a report about the people that were killed during the protests of June 25th. And why I am talking about the round of 16 is because Ruto was elected on a false promise on every avenue and every issue. And he decided when he came into power, the first thing he would do is to finish the opposition. Kenya is a multi-party democracy as defined in Chapter 4. And in fact, when you talk about a multi-party democracy, you talk about a government, but you also talk about an opposition. And one of the reasons the Political Parties Act was amended and signed into law by former President Kenyatta, it was because we wanted coalitions to be formed before or after elections to ensure that a government, once elected, was also to face a strong opposition so that the people could get a better government. So the first round of 16, William Ruto bought individual members of parliament and the Senate. He bought and destroyed political parties, and he took over the majority Azimio had won in the National Assembly by imposing not only the leader of opposition position to leader of majority for government, both in the Senate and Parliament, but in actually taking over political parties that voted against him. So from day one, William Ruto had a disproportional amount of power, which he did not win through a will of the people or through elections. He had no mandate to the power he was exercising. He had stolen the mandate not only of government, but that of the opposition. Now, obviously, at that time, the opposition went to the streets to try to object the way in which Ruto was manhandling the opposition. They were tricked into Bomas of Kenya, where they went to watch William Ruto dance, and he danced them to sleep and formed what was called the NADCO report, which was just basically another way of buying time so that the country's passions could go down. And then the Gen Z movement came, and when it came, it took over the agenda of the country. Again, this man, the butcher of Sagoi, was able to use state force. Remember, and Kenyans keep forgetting, as we speak now, Kenya is a military state. The military state, because the KDF, which was deployed during the protest, is still deployed. No rescinding of that order has ever been done, and Kenyans will have forgotten that the military can come to the streets. But Ruto was testing. If I push the democratic needle forward and this country goes into mayhem, what can I do? State police, on top of that, I have the military, therefore I can crush despondency. Fast forwarding to the final 16, if you take Baba into the tent, bring ODM into a broad coalition government, then anything left in terms of opposition in Kenya is no longer existent. And therefore, why not let Senator Cheregai test the waters? Legwa says that this bill will not meet the threshold of the constitution, but it has got Kenyans talking about how you can extend Ruto's term to 7 years, how you can be able to extend not just him, but the term of parliament. And you know, MPs, once they hear they can be extended, will be all lining up behind him with ODM now in bed with the government of UDA. That would pass in parliament. So the question that I want to ask tonight is not really just about the Cheregai bill, but what are we doing to stop William Ruto feeling that he can become another African dictator? African dictators have begun the same way Ruto is going, from Amin Dada of Uganda to Mobutu Sese Seko to Samuel Doe to Bokassa. All of them have begun by testing the constitution and acting outside the constitution. So what I did by starting this petition, I got an able team of lawyers, Ndegwa Njiru, Kibe Muigai, and so on. And we began to say, let us test Zakayo in regard to him versus the people, the issue of sovereignty, so that we can be able to make the courts, cornered in one area of law that they find very difficult to get away from. What is the role of the public? What is the issue of public participation? And what is the voice of the people? And therefore, I want to congratulate the judge who entered the judgment on the KICC matter, because that is the first blood we are drawing from Zakayo's greedy veins to show that he cannot dispose of national heritage and monuments at his will. That kind of trend is what we are trying to pursue when we are pursuing the JKIA matter, to say that this is a national asset belonging to the people of Kenya and you cannot do that. If we continue to demonstrate that and we begin to push the courts to their limits, then all these issues, whether it's a 7-year extension, whether it's the sale of JKIA, when all those issues will come back to what about the public, as was the issue of the finance bill of 2024. So I want to say, and I want to say it today without any fear of contradiction, that in the JKIA deal, which will start its hearings on October 17th of this month, coming, we are going to be testing not just the courts, we are going to be testing the country's readiness to test what is public participation. Should we come out in victory of JKIA, I see a time that the country will rise up and believe in the power of the public and believe that the public can actually triumph over Zakayo. And that is where I think this country needs to go. So I want to tell this forum today that we are going to do everything in our power to make sure we save JKIA, because in saving JKIA, we send a warning signal as we enter the quarterfinals with Zakayo that the public will not stop and the sovereignty of the Kenyan people will win and triumph over him.
Thank you very much, TG. You put up a very valid point that the judiciary will be Kenya's savior, the judiciary and the people working together. I want to bring Mweru back in so that we take some questions from the panel. I see very many hands are up.
Yeah, as we proceed, Jagwa, do you mind clarifying something for me? So we have the public-private Partnership 2021, the Act, and then we have the Privateship Act 2023. So the Adani deal was based on this Public-Private Partnership 2021 Act. Has there been an amendment to this PPP 2021?
Thank you, Mweru. And again, thank you, Tony, for that able submissions and the encouragement that the people must remain together and that the people must take the only last resort of ensuring that everything is done is put to the test by the judiciary. And of course, when the judiciary pronounces itself, we normally say that under Article 159, the judicial power is derived from the people and will be exercised and administered in the name of the people. So when a judge pronounces himself and declares a particular act and constitution, even before I answer the question, It is not just that particular judge who has pronounced, it's the people of Kenya who have pronounced themselves on that particular issue. And therefore, when you see somebody defying a court order, he's not just defying that judge, but is defying and defiling the sovereignty of the people that is vested on that particular judge. I may say that the Public-Private Partnership Act suffered the first amendments in 2023. And the amendments that were brought forth were designed in a manner that it would be possible for the KK regime and William Ruto Raptama to commit what Kenyans have already built, like the JKIA, to the hands of an individual private citizen. Previously, under the initial act before it suffered the amendments, government could not commit the already existing projects to the hands of a private individual. There is a slight provision under Section 3 of the amended act that purports to prevent the public properties where money has been invested already from being vested in the hands of the private individual. But so watered down that they are circumventing that provision. The act that was again declared unconstitutional by the High Court is a completely different legal regime that was meant to circumvent the issue of a going concern being vested in the hands of a private citizen. And that is why, after suffering this, the Adani deal was not brought under the armpits of the Privatization Act, but was brought under the armpits of the Public-Private Partnership Act, because they knew the act would the Privatization Act would suffer a serious fatal blow in the High Court. So the amendments are there. They were brought by Zakayo so that he can push his wishes and aspiration of grabbing this country. I thank you.
Thank you, Ndegwa. Amweru, I see so many hands up, but I want you to circulate the mic.
Yes,
2 minutes each.
Yeah. So I'll start with Ras G, followed by Farah, followed by Boniface, then Daniel, then Bondo. So please proceed, Ras G, then Farah will follow after you. Ras G, do you hear me? Let's go to Farah.
Thank you. Am I audible? Mweru?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Go on.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, Anthony, I think you personally know what my stance and what my solution for the Adani deal with the JKIA is. And the one thing I read today is on the Daily Nation is that the government have opened up a window for competitive bidding of the JKIA deal. My opinion would be we be the investors, because this country, if you look at how they have systematically taken away our hope, it is to a point whereby we feel disenfranchised from our own country. But my suggestion for the JKIA deal is let's form a consortium, come up with a 30% of the 1.8 billion that the Adani is offering, have a private company run the macro and the micro management of the airport, and we have dividends paid out in 10 years' time. And the beauty about this is anytime the government will try to privatize anything else, we'll only ask one question: how much is it? Because what Kenyans need to understand is hii pesa tuko nayo. Tofauti iko, hii pesa haiko mali moja, wewe uko na ingine, mimi niko na nyingine, somebody else has some part of it. But if the 78 billion, which is the 30%, was to be divided amongst all of us equally, it would be 1560 shillings. It's impossible. Form a consortium, let everybody buy shares into it. That was number one. Number two, I would like to talk to Kina Jeremiah Kioni, and I saw Eugene was also here. In a wholesome society, everybody has a role to play. And we haven't honestly played our roles in this country diligently and honestly. We do not care enough for our motherland. we sometimes look at ourselves more before we look at our motherland. And we need to differentiate between that which is collective and that which is personal. At this moment where we are in, we have a generation that has come up and is willing to fight for what is right. What is the older generation's role? Traditionally, the older generation guided the next generation, impacted them with knowledge and skills that would would help them survive. My appeal to you is kindly, tafadhalini, hatuwaambii msimame kando, but tunaomba mshike wale ambao wametokea mikono as parents, because the next time people go to the streets, unless we have a unified front, we are only going out to become shooting practice for the police again. Be selfless enough to understand that this country is bigger than your ambitions sometimes. Tafadhalini. Let's give this country the respect it deserves. Jitolee kumshika mkono yule ambaye amejitolea kukufia nchi. It's not a must for you to occupy office. A free and fair country should be enough for you. Most of the older generation have become the stumbling block to progress. And this is my explanation to this statement. You, as long as you can make ends meet, you don't look at what is collective. And the worst part of it is a lot of the people who have even previously been entrusted with leadership have never put this country before their stomachs. We do not need young leaders, nor do we need old leaders. We need leaders of integrity, people who understand the difference between ya nchi na yake. Our national flag says, Kenya istahili heshima. Tuungane mikono, pamoja kazini. And that is my only request. Let us come together for nothing else but for this country, selflessly. As Oeba does it every day. Mnaonaga Oeba every day in the streets. He never asks for money. He never asks for anything other than having the hope of a better Kenya. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Farah, for those wonderful remarks. To Honorable Kioni and Wakili Ndegwa, Farah is asking, can we have teamwork? What is called a unity amongst all of us. So I see the real Joe, Daniel, Boniface. So let's start with Boniface. Then we go to Daniel. Then we go to Mr. Right. Would we have responded
to that one so that we don't forget?
Yes, sir. Make it brief.
Very, very briefly, I appreciate what Farah has said, and it is just a short while ago I had a meeting with a few of the Gen Zs, and you remember when they came out to do the protest, they had a clear statement towards us to stay away. And it was a little scary of us to try and come in because we feared being accused of taking advantage of a situation that has been created by others. So it is not that we stayed away because we didn't feel like we had a responsibility on the same issues, but we stayed away in respect of the young people, so that it was also necessary for them to give it a go. I was one of the people who was very disappointed because they were almost there. But if at the beginning of it there was convergence of energies or synergy, what they did during the month of June would have actually helped us move perhaps to the next level as a country. So what I asked of Farah is that I hear you and I agree with you completely. We are available to work together for the good of this nation. Without doubt, there are those of us who have been in leadership who deserve the blame entirely. It's also important that you avoid blanket condemnation because that has been used by other regimes in the past. and they have managed to scatter any effort that has been made to deal with the malpractices in our systems, so that we encourage those who need to be encouraged, condemn those who need to be condemned, but a blanket condemnation of every person who has ever tried to help in the leadership, again, does not help the cause. It helps those who want to cause a chaos. And finally is that it is also important to do some little bit of background check, so that when you say that there are those who just want, when they kama wamechiba watu wametosha, you may want to find out how is it that those of us who have been out struggling for the last couple of years, how have we been surviving? Who has been paying? Who has been meeting our bills? You'll be surprised to find that there is a struggle with some of the people you think are doing very well, and it is a sacrifice that they also have done. And I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Now let's go to Daniel, Boniface, and Mr. Wright. Daniel, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay, hi. I was worried you kept reshuffling the queue and putting me behind, but thank you for the mic. I have a question, especially because I have guys like Tony Gashoka here, we have Ndegwa, Kioni, and legal minds. I'm not a lawyer, so I'll speak very naively. I hope it won't be too naive, but this is from my own understanding. But I had Kioni say that and also I think Gashoka say that there are cases in court that are supposed to compel the government, especially the one that's about the referendum, where people exercise whether they want the government to keep working. And I always hear the word referendum from the people, and I wonder, speaking as a Kenyan, not as a lawyer, is it's almost like this question of sovereign power and delegated power. It's almost like the delegated power is always superior to the sovereign power. It's almost like the delegated power, the sovereign power that you keep being told it's like a decorated promise that is never actually supposed to be fulfilled. It's more of an inconvenience, right? It's all you keep being told you have sovereign power, but when it actually matters, it's more of an inconvenience than anything else. So I keep wondering, how are you supposed to compel you have the sovereign power compelling the delegated power to do something against itself? Because you're going to have the sovereign power rising up to say something that is in opposition to the delegated power. And I'm just wondering, number one, even if you keep saying that the sovereign power is superior, in actual sense, we keep begging the delegated power to do things. If we say there's a referendum, will we not need the same delegated power to prepare for it? And I'm just wondering, how can we ask, unless we have, unless the delegated power is a convict, and it is a convict, and it is captive to us, how can you ask it to prepare for its own execution? That's just what I'm wondering. I'm done now.
TJ, I would want you to respond to that.
What I am happy to tell my brother here is that when the Bombers committee or the Bombers congregation was debating the issues around the constitution, what became later the 2010 constitution, there was a very clear and determined policy, particularly by Yash Guy and several of the architects of the 2010 constitution, that the power of the people must be protected under a Bill of Rights. And the argument towards the Bill of Rights was that even if you elected a government or a parliament, neither the government nor the parliament could take certain unalienable rights from the people. So fundamental was the Bill of Rights in the Kenyan constitution that many constitutional authors have called it one of the best or most progressive constitutions in the world. And that is why when you are hearing the submission of my brother Ndegwa Njiru, he told you whatever Cheregai is trying in parliament is a nullity. Because even if they were to pass or even to adapt the extension of the presidential term to 7 years, it is among the protected preserves that was left for the people of Kenya. And when the former president and my village mate, Uhuru Kenyatta, tried to impose upon us the BBI, The courts 5-0 in the High Court and later upheld in the Court of Appeal told President Kenyatta that him and Raila Odinga, and thank God the courts could predict Raila Odinga would betray Kenya later. The court said that it was not the preserve of a president to ignite or initiate a people-driven process. So I am saying to you, it is not a gift. It was actually a preserve that was built into the foundation of the 2010 Constitution by the founding fathers, if I can call them so, of the second liberation. An army of people protected the Bill of Rights, and that is what gives you sovereignty, and that is what will win us JKIA, and that is what has saved KICC.
Thank you, TG, for keeping it.
May I add something to it?
Just 1 minute, Honorable Kioni.
Yeah, and having
1 minute, I'll bring you back.
Yeah, having been part of the 27 people who sat at Naivasha with the final document, and I want to agree with the gentleman who asked the question, that it is true that we seem to be struggling to use our to get back our delegated authority or power, or that sovereign authority. And it is because we were getting a new constitution from a background of a very, very tough time with Moi, and from a lot of resistance from the executive and those who wanted the status quo. So I agree we should have provided for how do we get this delegated authority back to ourselves. We have provisions in the constitution that will need constitutional interpretation. And we believe that in a good day, the Constitutional Court will find it that yes, you can exercise it through a given steps, which were not provided for in the Constitution, but which would have now to be provided for through a constitutional court. And I believe that is why once it is done, in future it will not be a difficult thing. We'll have already set the way of how you can get back this delegated power.
I want you to hold on that thought as I bring in Boniface. He has been here for quite a minute. Boniface, what are your thoughts?
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Evening to you. Go ahead. You have, let me give you 1.5 minutes because our time is running.
Yeah. So I would like to respond for my highlighted points. Kitu ya kwanza, I would like to speak about Adani. Adani, that is not a good deal for the benefit of the people of Kenya. So this is a deal between the government and the Adani people. So we need to find a way as the people of Kenya by the Constitution, Article number 1, so that we prevent this deal by taking it to Adani people. Because even if you look for the time limit, 30 years, hiyo ni kitu yenye huyu jamaa anataka kuweka anataka kuchukua hiki, anataka kuuza hii kitu. So we as people, we must come out and defend it as the way we did by the financial bill. So hakuna sauti yenye huyu jamaa anasikia, huyu jamaa anaitwa Ruto, except by the people, the power of the people. And then this thing called about Shiva and Shiva Shafi vitu, this is another deal yenye president anatumia kuipa pesa kutoka kwa wananchi. Hii kitu na I think like I've seen some lawyers like Ndengo hapa. So hii kitu inafaa kusimamishwa. Hii kitu this is a big corruption from the government. Hii kitu inafaa kusimamishwa so that hii mambo ya kuibia wa Kenya. Wakati wanataka kutuambia kwamba they want to register more than 30 million people. So even if you can calculate even 30 million people, times almost 300 yenye mtu anafaa kulipa, because they say that the minimum amount the person needs to pay is 300 shillings. So even you can calculate that's a big a huge amount of money. These people they are stealing. So there's still another thing called
Go ahead. I've written your question about Chief, and because I'm seeing time is gone, I want you to condense your question so that we give the other people a chance. Then I can bring in new speakers.
Niko namaliza please. Nilikuwa naongelea about another thing. It's about the IPC. So so I don't know the way. I've seen a lot of people here, like Indengwa, Jeremiah, Kiona, and other people. You can boost these things, call IP, so that it amended very fast. So that if, as people, as Chinese people, we are going to push this government out, because that's the next plan, so that we have an IP, so that we can elect another new people. So hii mambo na IP wanataka kukimbisha hiyo mambo na ukora ati misimamishwa sijui nini. So it must be stopped. About the amendment of the constitution, hii kitu wameanza sijui ku-increase the terms.
I'm going to ask you to land so that I take Mr. Right and Ras G, then nilete speakers wengine. Because hiyo tunasema ya constitution imekuwa handled. Ya term limit.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Right, you're next.
Thank you, Anthony. I will just talk about our president, who is very notorious. He can't hear anyone. And I can say Ruto had a chance to reconstruct and reconcile with the citizens when he dissolved the whole cabinet. After that, that was not a good time he had to fix the whole Kenya and go forward as citizens desired. And rather than doing that, he showed us the middle finger. That means he does not listen to any citizen. What he is about his last aid power. Rather than doing what citizens did, he re-elected the same people who made citizens to get out of street to protest. People who are mostly known by corruption. Akira Chirchir and that guy by name Murkombe, who are very bad people indeed in his cabinet. Ruto being a bad leader, I can say he is also a tribalistic. They are accusing Gachagua.
Mr. Right.
Yes.
I want you to remain within the context of today's topic. It's the state of the nation right now. And if we can condense your questions to Adani, Chief, Kentrapo, those things that people have talked about, without going into the history of what Ruto has done.
Okay, now I will talk now about Chief. Chief is the biggest scam we have in Kenya, and that is very bad. As citizens, we should not be negotiated or talk about Chief as citizens. That is not the biggest scam. And then a story of Adan, it is now the worst. It is not the worst. As now, imagine renting a JKA for more than 20 years. That is now exactly that year. Imagine now you are 30. To get it back, you will be 60 or more. It means those people are there just to do what they want and not to listen to citizens. And I can say, Adan and the Chief are the worst decisions as made by our president. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Right. Now, Senior Kansukibe Muigai, I've sent you the mic. I would want you to accept it so that you come up. Ras D, you're next.
Thank you, my friend Anthony, and thank you, my fellow patriots, all of you who are here. I think I'll be very quick because I have a question for my SG. I'm not still so sure whether he is my SG. He will tell me today because it also forms part of the big question that I'm about to ask. But let me go just direct. Kwanza, the High Court declaration on that Privatization Act 2023 was unconstitutional. Now, I want to ask Wakili Kwanza, Wakili Ndegwa, we've talked before. Wakili, why do we lose these cases at the appeals, at the Court of Appeal? Hapo ndio penye shida inatokea sana. We look like we have won in the High Court, but once these cases zinaenda in the other upper court, tunaanza kupotelea huko. Is it as a result of You remember when Uhuru was in office, there are many judges that he had refused to promote ama kuwakubalia, na wengi walikuwa court of appeal. And when Zakayo came into office, those were the same judges wenye alirudisha kazini. Naona sasa, why are we losing so many cases? And it might look like a win, but actually it's not a guaranteed win. Second question to Wakili Ndegwa, who is here, and others Wakili. It has become a trend in this nation. Watu wanaiba pesa, they loot in terms of billions, knowing very well that these loots will protect them from prosecution and other things. Is there a way that Zakayo and his regime, governors who have looted the counties, because what is happening in the country, there is outright looting with the blessing of Zakayo there. Is there a way, after we have gotten rid of this administration, that all these individuals can be held into account? Now, my third question goes to my fellow leaders, who is Tony and Jeremiah. And I would want to start with Jeremiah Kioni. We in the Jubilee find ourselves at crossroads at this special time, Bwana SG. And like I started, siko sure kama there is this pull and push. And it happened when Sabina and Wakina Kanini got used by the current Murima man, who now wants our sympathy. Jeremiah, what are you currently doing to address the civil servants being intimidated to join from SHIF to NHIF? Because I think there is politics also in this, and you as politician, what are you doing about those fellas? Also, Jeremiah, I want you to answer this. There is a population, like we, the young people. Kuna ile group yenye, like I'll just go direct Bwana SG. Pauline Njoroge had a couple of guys that we used to work at the secretariat wakati tulikuwa tunafanyia Uhuru campaign 1, 2, 3. There is a group that has left to go and campaign for Raila Odinga. Now, what is the position of Azimio? Are you still going to wait for Raila, who is also part of the mess that we are trying to get rid in this country? Kwa sababu Azimio as it stands sahi, ni kama bado Raila ana control Azimio. We want to know the way forward. And as you answer that, there is a group of people who feel also that Uhuru Kenyatta is also part of the mess in the country. There are those who feel that. So, how are you going to win their trust back now that you are on these platforms that were brought up by the GNZs and all that? There are those who feel strongly that that Uhuru Kenyatta is part of the mess that is being continued by William Samoei Ruto. I rest my case.
Thank you, Ras G. You raised a couple of questions there, but I'll go to Wakili Yesito Nikashoka's hand is up. So TG first, then Ndegwa, then we bring in Senior Counsel Kibe Muigai.
I actually cede to Kibe Muigai. Let Kibe give his submission.
Thank you very much.
I equally cede to Kibe Muigai.
Thank you very much, Counsel. Kibe, Senior Counsel Kibe Muigai, you have the floor.
On the issues that we are talking about, that I was notified, I have followed part of this debate on the question of Adani, and of course there is the issue of the amendment bill to the constitution, plus the couple of questions that have been answered. On the Adani issue, let me start by saying and agreeing with the position by Mr. Ndegwa and Mr. Tony Gashoka that we have made some good progress in court. This matter is pending in court, and there is certain work that is supposed to be done in terms of amending the petition, which Ndegwa and I, together with other advocates, are supposed to be doing. So this is the kind of case that one would be able to say some judice, and the merits or unmerit of it I, as a lawyer involved in the matter, we cannot be able to discuss, except, of course, the legitimate public issues that must continue to be discussed despite the rule of sub judice. Two of those issues that I would like to highlight is the fact that under our constitutions, there is the provisions for transparency and accountability. A process to be good must be transparent and accountable throughout all the stages. But when you read like what John Bundy was explaining to the Senate, this is a process that has clearly been rushed. When you look at the yardsticks that have been set out under the law to be able to ensure that the interests of this country have been protected, there is no genuine effort that has been made. Particularly, before you can use a PIP, there must be clear justification as to why a competitive method was not resorted to by the procuring authority. In this instance, the Kenya Airports Authority. This is a big issue for the simple reason that it is for the first time, if Adani is just a normal applicant and investor interested in this project, then one would wonder, why is the entire government machinery, including the president himself, mobilizing themselves to ensure that this process is completed? There is a court order that has been given, but despite that court order, there is a clear determination to ensure that you arrive at a process whereby you say that for practical purposes, Adani has been granted all the approvals. We are just waiting for the court. This is a clear case of bad faith and ought not to be there. There would, of course, be the other bigger issue that is there really a good value? Why isn't there a proposal to build a second airport in Kenya, and somebody is basically coming to get an important public asset of strategic nature without putting any real money? This should be a big matters for concern, but I appreciate that there are matters we shall be dealing with in court. Having said that, let me say one or two things about the bill to amend the constitution that has been submitted to Parliament. Now, there is an element in which you would say that we are not very surprised that William Ruto has mobilized his henchmen to try to get into this kind of game. It was always obvious from the word go that the day William Ruto becomes president of Kenya, he will do everything to hang on there by hook or crook. If the law allows him to hang in there, where he carries himself as a Democrat who can win elections, then he's going to do that. But after Gen Z, it is obvious William Ruto no longer believes that he can con his way with the people and to get himself re-elected. And this is why abduction, repression, and all these other forms, bribery of politicians, are going to be the major features. And now the thing now that he's trying to do is that if you cannot be able even to be sure that all this intimidation will get you re-elected, then you try to get yourself a 7-year term and be able to do with the presidency whatever you set out to do. It is not possible constitutionally. A constitutional amendment can itself be unconstitutional. Why do I say that? For the simple reason that the people stands at the head of the constitution. If you have a mandate, you get elected clearly on the basis that you receive the people's vote for a specific number of years. In this case, 5 years. No amendment of the constitution can substitute for the will of the people. And therefore, it is my view that this bill should actually not wait for it to go through the stages. Just like it was with the BBI bill, we must challenge the constitutionality of this bill at the stage of the bill. because you do not want to be faced up with a situation that something that from the word go is absolutely unconstitutional has been permitted to proceed to the level of wasting of public finance, and also to ensure that the people of Kenya are distracted from what they ought to be doing. Finally, in a country that is staring at bankruptcy, where the government is no longer able to pay workers, county governments have got no money, all facilities that no more services that government should be offering is no longer capable of offering, it's a big shame to the president that he has time to follow Gachagua with impeachment, to sponsor these kind of bills. And the only thing he's truly interested in all this is the Adani deal. So it is the biggest letdown that you can have. And the least, and I keep repeating this, those people who voted for this government should feel very ashamed of themselves, because it amounts to betrayal of this country. That for the second time, people are back to the trenches to fight for things that we assumed we had already crossed those rivers. With these submissions, let me hear what the others are saying. And about the Court of Appeal, sorry, I had said I'll answer that. The Court of Appeal, basically what is happening, these cases are won fair and square before the High Court. But what you can see with Chief is where that the High Court finds something to be unconstitutional, then you get a stay to say, you see, when a declaration is made under the existing law, you can only remove that declaration of unconstitutionality by hearing the appeal, and the appeal court saying that there was no basis for unconstitutionality, because it is the High Court that constitutionally is given the original jurisdiction to say whether something is constitutional or not, and can only be changed after the appeal is heard. But now you are seeing monkey games going on at the Court of Appeal, where declaration of unconstitutionality are being stayed. This is completely illegal, even on the basis of previous decisions of the High Court. But again, we must bear in mind, during Ruto's time, anything goes. All these kind of crazy things, like where the police arrest you and you have the Inspector General of the police saying it is not the police abducting people, all these crazy things are going to be happening. And it's a shame that the country has to go through this kind of massacres. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much for your submission. I'm really appreciative of all the lawyers we have in the panel today that are assisting us with answering questions. So as we go forward, I have Jose, I have MESQ, followed by Adjoga, then Kaka, then Bondo, then Real Joe. Please proceed for at least 3 minutes per person. So Jose, please go ahead. Josephine, I'm sorry, Josephine.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Go on, Josephine.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Anton, for giving me this opportunity and also for hosting the space. Good evening, fellow countrymen and women of Kenya. Yeah, and I really appreciate what you are doing, guys, the senior councils, for the information you are giving us and the feedback. We really appreciate. We are not taking it for granted. What I would wish to say is that regarding the Adani issue in our country, the truth is that His Excellency the President, that is Mr. Ruto, has just shown that he is not even willing to be submissive to any law whatsoever, because as at now, there is a lot happening, and as the lawyers are just telling us, but he's standing a deaf ear, and everyone can see that. And now, again, we are seeing somebody feeling that they would really go and even file a motion in court, in the parliament, to ensure that they get him back, or they extend the period of him being in office. That's very, very sad as a nation. And we need to stand up for what belongs to us as a country. Fellow countrymen and women, a time has come
we are not going to soothe President Ruto for any reason whatsoever. When he thinks also they want to impeach Gachagua and whatever, he should be living also, they should be living together, because we are just tired of whatever he's trying to do to our country. And we need to tell him the truth that the country belongs to us. It doesn't belong to him. And we need to put this very clear and very categorical. If it means all of us calling upon all the citizens of Kenya and they say that he must go, we need to do that. A time has come, we cannot bear it any longer. Regarding the Shifa insurance, it's very sad. Looking at it at a point whereby somebody used to contribute maybe 1,400 and would even get services, especially the civil servants, they would get even dental services and Optica. Right now, there's nothing like that, and it has increased from 1,700 to 2,850. Then what are we doing to our people? We are not increasing their salaries. The civil servants are really in distress. You can see how much it's happening. We've seen the other doctor the other day committing suicide. Is still trading till today. Something very important. We need psychologists and counselors employed. Nothing is happening. Nobody cares. We are seeing suicidal matters day in, day out.
Josephine, am I the only one who lost Josephine Mwero?
He's breaking.
You know, as Josephine fixes her mic, to all the senior panelists here, you hear people are saying they are broke and more salary is being taken from their pay slips. That's just a point to take home. Josephine, I want you to work on your mic. I'll keep you up there.
Yeah, I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Somebody was calling me.
Okay. Keep it brief, Josephine.
Thank you. Yes. So, what are we saying? Is the high time actually we even declare the MP.
Josephine, we've lost you again. So, Mwero, who was next?
Can I pick it up?
ESQ.
Go ahead. Who said he wants to pick it up?
It's a joke.
ESQ, please go ahead.
Who is ESQ? Can I pick it up?
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks so much, Tony. Thanks so much for giving me this opportunity. Mine will be very brief. I'm seeing we have Wakili Kibe, the veteran journalist Tony here, Wakili Ndegwa, and Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. It is true that politics has brought us to where we are, and we are just from elections the other day. It is barely 2 years away from elections. Those 2 years has been marked by a robust and deliberate efforts to make the big man hold all the stakes in majority of our portfolios, economic portfolios, and that is the obsession currently we are seeing with Mr. Ruto. It is so unfortunate. Actually, before even we move any further to the third year of his presidency, I know majority of you now still can now see that there was a deliberate intention by Ruto to ensure that in every sector of our economy, he has a hand of getting back his shares. He must be a shareholder in almost all sectors. It all started from a national housing project. We don't know where that project is. I don't know how many Kenyans so far who are middle class or who are on the lower end of the economic ladder have actually gotten access to those houses. After housing issues, that project seems to not even employing anyone. We are back here on the issue of our airports.
And a lot of scandals after scandals, oil scandal, what scandal, so many scandals. Now we have SHIF. The rain has not just dropped with the Adani issue. Now again we have SHIF coming in. That SHIF also has so many bureaucracy, and you can notice Safaricom is involved, Adani is involved. There is nowhere. Now our children, universities are closing up. Some of us children are going back because the funding models currently we have is totally reckless and not making sense. You can read all those papers, you are not getting anything out of them. What are we saying? Our country is collapsing. Politicians who are here, Wakilis, and thanks so much to Wakili Ndegwa, Kibe, and so many people who have been on the front line, genuinely fighting for the interest of, of Kenyan men and women who are actually suffering currently. I'm in the healthcare industry. I know what is happening at KNH. Currently, when you talk about Kenyatta and you compare it with Muhimbili Hospital here in Tanzania, there is a complete difference. You can be easily treated with very good ethical and professional standard here in Tanzania at Muhimbili Referral Hospital. But when you come here in KNH, you will utapanga laini mpaka next year. With very rude people, very rude consultants, very rude healthcare workers. And why are they rude? It is not because they want. The pressure, the frustrations that those people are working under is very dire. And they are forced to live now in turns to do what they are supposed to be doing, and they are expecting those interns to meet the standard of their own standards when they are in their private practice. And you saw now we have lost a very young girl. Worst of it all, and I want to ask Mheshimiwa Jeremiah Kioni, was there any allocation for intern doctors for the year 2024-2025? The case is still in court on the issue of internship remunerations. But even as it is in court, is it okay that we pay MCAs 300, 400, 500,000? In fact, some of them are even using billions to go and benchmark how doctors are doing well in Malaysia, how doctors are doing well in Russia, and earning 500,000, using so much billions and millions to go and benchmark, leaving our intern doctors dying here because they cannot be paid. And they have to do what consultants are supposed to do, because those consultants are frustrated and they are forced to go to their private practice. I want to ask you, Mheshimiwa Kioni, I know this is a very hard task at this time. I feel it, because we cannot, this is a discussion we all need to soberly bring on board. We cannot say that you go out and fight for the interest of Kenyans when we see politicians have crossed the lines and they are now eating all together in the same plate. It is a multifaceted effort that will involve all of us, but at least you are in a position to furnish Kenyans with the right information. And I request you, moving forward, even as to furnish me with whether or not, and the wakilis who are here, to give us a legal advice or a legal exposure on what exactly are we going to do moving forward with our medical doctors and medical interns who are currently frustrated working in the healthcare facilities. I know some of you are not going to these public facilities in the country. But let me tell you, things are not the way you think they are. This country is collapsing. This country is going down to the dogs. So I'm requesting those who are here, the wakilis who are here, and Mheshimiwa Kioni, kindly furnish us with an information on whether we have funding for health, for the Ministry of Health, and specifically for our medical interns who are likely, and I'm telling you, in the next 1 month again, one of them will die, because I've worked in those healthcare facilities and I see what is happening. I see what is happening every day. Our children are really suffering. Lastly, is that the reason why Gachagua is being haunted, it is not because there is need to have a better Kenya for all of us. No. There is a lot behind the screens that we are asking Mheshimiwa Jeremiah Kioni, who are in the political spaces, to be able to literally open our eyes and tell us what is the problem, because literally it is not about Kenyans. It is about either there is someone who is supposed to have shares somewhere and is not getting the right shares. We need to know, so that this politics of tribalism simply die its own natural death. We really need to know what is happening. We cannot be fighting Adani today. We are fighting Shift today, and all of a sudden...
Excuse me, Adroga, do you mind
we
landing,
really have
please?
to land. We have a very hot mic.
I'm actually landing, sorry. We cannot be fighting about issues that are actually bedeviling Kenyans, and then there is also another war on political class, which actually curtails all these wars that we are fighting. And
Ajugo, I got your questions. Honorable Kioni, sorry. There seems to be a lot of questions coming your way. Kenyans are saying Kenya is not working for them. You've been asked, I don't want you to respond to the Jubilee question for now. I'll give you time to respond to that. But Kenyans, Ajugo is asking, was there any allocation of money for doctors and interns in the last financial bill? And he's simply saying that the public sector, especially hospitals, is not working. And what can you guys in the opposition do about it? I think, Ajugo, I don't think Honorable Kioni is on the mic. But I'll keep the question for him. I'll keep your questions here. Muero, who was next?
Kaka, please proceed.
All right. Thanks a lot for this.
I'm sorry, before you start, for the next upcoming speakers, please let's limit our time to at least 3 minutes each. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Muru, for this chance, and Anthony for organizing this. First of all, let me take this chance to greet all Kenyans of great concern. My fellow lawyers and advocates who are here. Greetings, and thank you for helping to fix this country's crisis that we're facing in. I know that we've been really meeting frequently on the spaces previously, trying to answer some of the hard questions. We will be keeping our ear today to listen. If there are questions that need to be answered, we're going to answer as per se. But one thing that I'm going to say, and I'm going to urge everyone here, is that everybody who is listening, let us marshal back the effort and go to the streets. And to Honorable Kioni, a simple question, and I'm asking this one also because I am not political affiliated. I'm just like any other citizens. But if you are in the government today, if you are a CS, because we've seen Raila, we've seen the fight of the Gen Zs in the streets, and the outcome of it is the Raila's camp was considered. In fact, even the most vocal people who are in parliament and in Senate, all of them went silent. I was shocked. If you are considered today, because if you're given a chance today to be a CS, will you be like Wundai, who was upright, left, center, keeping the government on toes in terms of performance? If you can only answer that, I'll be very happy. Because for me, and for the many years I have in the corridors of justice as an advocate, dealing with so many matters, sorry to say this, so that the biggest problem we have is corruption. And even the leaders who are here, to all the lawyers and the advocates who've spoken before me, Negua and others, senior counsel, I've seen Kibe here. If they say that the grass are always greener on the other side, that's what the philosopher says. And the moment someone's stomach is full, they will forget someone else who is next. And this is the biggest questions that if we can unravel this puzzle to anyone who is listening to this one, we're going to build a better country. I can see this space. For example, let's say we are 500 of us. if you take the total population of Kenya and minus this number that are here, let's say all of us are transformed in terms of mind and everything, and take this small population of people, let's say to Nairobi only, and you become all employees of Nairobi County, this country is going to move forward. But the problem is, are you making noise because you're on the opposite side, you're not on the government, or you are a senior patriot who want the best for this nation? Let's even forget about Adan. We are fixing all this because what people don't want, if people are pushing for impeachment of Gachagua in expense of people who are committing suicide because there's no job, then we're not speaking. In 2014, I was even shocked, like Safaricom was given a deal of 15 billion to do surveillance, and then again, they are now being given 104 billion to fix SHIF. My comments in 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Honorable Kenny, I don't know whether you're back, but you seem to be having, people seem to be having very many questions for you. I don't want you to handle Jubilee first. I'll give you time to handle Jubilee. But
I actually don't even need to handle Jubilee. You can handle it else.
Thank you very much, sir. So Kaka has asked, what would you do different if you're in government? And if you got an appointment, would you still keep the government on its toes, or would you switch like the likes of the people who were appointed from Azimio, who one day were not believers in KK, but the moment they got jobs, they now understand the KK manifesto better than the people in KK themselves. Then you are asked about people committing suicide because they can't get jobs and a very toxic working environment. What are your questions? You can start with the KK. Would you become a believer who understands their manifesto better than them if you had the chance?
We were offered, we declined for the reason that there is nothing like panel beating to this regime. It will need to go the whole of it. Hope to bring in a new team of people who believes in something. Two is because that was still what I was calling Kipidi. It was meant to take the steam off Gen Z, and it seems to have succeeded for the time being. And it will not be good to be recruited into those schemes that take the energy from others. On the issues of the interns, it also goes for the junior secondary school teachers. Remember, they had protest demonstrations, strikes because of the payment, the levels of payment. They were told to go back as they try and negotiate. So whatever money that was, whatever amount of money that was budgeted for these sectors is not adequate. It actually amounts to underpayment or paying them less than what they were being paid there before. And it is for that reason that we need to start with them. When they call for strikes, let us not wait for them to do it alone. We should be out together with them. On this issue of the chief, is another scandal, and I think we are now seeing what we saw in South Africa, state capture. Those who are familiar with the Gupta, Adani is our Gupta, and the only thing we can do as a country, on top of the legal battles that we have in court, is to prepare to come back to the streets and resist it as a whole. But again, we should not allow ourselves to lose focus. The focus is the entire Ruto regime must be removed from power. And that is why we have defined ourselves into two groups. Is Operation Okoa Kenya or Operation Okoa Zakayo. Gachagua's impeachment is fake. It is the same people. It's not people from outside who are impeaching them. Ni wao wenyewe wanatuchezea sarakasi. Please, Kenyans, don't get dragged into it. It is a case of self-preservation. Gachagua is interested in preserving himself for 2027, Ruto the same. And they will continue playing these games. Even the issue of trying to amend the constitution to increase the term of office for William, it is meant to distract us from the scandals. Let us remain focused on the ball. And the ball is home for Zakayo.
Honorable Kenny, yes. I want you to hold on that thought because I can hear you are so passionate you're actually banging your table.
I am sorry.
As we bring in the no, it's okay. I understand. TG, Council Ndegwa and Senior Council Kibe Muigai. TD, I have a question on my DM. You came up with the genius idea of taking the JKI issue to court. Now, Kenyans have asked me to ask you, what do we do about Chief? It seems to be a pain in people's neck and can't tackle. Just a minute, TG, then Mwero can circulate the mic.
I think that's a very valid question. And what I was saying to you about why the Andani deal was an important one to start with was because, you know, even in strategy or let's say war, you need to be able to zero in on the enemy and get the mood, not just of the country, because even the court or the courts live within this country. And I think for me, as a tactical issue, the JKIA brought together everybody simply because of its importance as a national asset, but also because it was a profitable, working, operative parastatal, where Kenyans were not just shareholders of it, but were contributory people in making it a profitable enterprise. So not only were they taking an asset that they shouldn't sell, but they were even ignoring the contributory part that the Kenyan people play towards JKIA, number one. Number two, it was the beginning of the ones that were paving the way for Andani. The Andani deals are interrelated and interdependent insofar as he is a Gupta of Kenya. In his and we had this before with Kamlesh Patni and with Aglo Listin and other scandals before, where the state choose an operative and they begin to use him as an agent who can pay them abroad. By creating shell companies. So the Andani group has created the share. Well, I am told by the lawyers we should not discuss certain things. You know, I'm a plaintiff in this matter. So I would be careful, since my counsels are also on this space, not to tie their hands and their legs in court. But let me say just that you do not want one person to be utilized as a vehicle to be able to overtake the externalization of corruption. Let me give the example of Chicken Gate, which was really a wonderful expose of how these deals are done. They used a UK-based company, paid money externally in order to corrupt the electoral system with the old, electoral commission body. And I think the idea of Andani could have been the idea that he can be able to externalize his transactions. But because we are subjudized, I don't want to say anything more on the matter.
Thank you, TG. Mwero, you can back to you on the mic.
Yes, let's have Bondo. Please, let's limit our submissions to at least 3 minutes so we can add more speakers. Thanks. It's Bondo, then we'll have KOT, then Mount Kilimanjaro, and then Real Joe, and then we'll bring in new speakers.
Mwero, can I say something before probably they speak?
Sure, you can.
Absolutely.
Yes, I wanted to add something to what Tony has said, because I think I will be going somewhere after 10. What I wanted to add as to the question that was asked that needs a pointed answer is, now that Adani, we are trying to deal with it in court, what shall we do with Chief? Now, Chief, as I had tried to explain, the High Court already ruled by a judgment, with a judgment that it is unconstitutional. The Court of Appeal has stayed the judgment of the High Court declaring unconstitutionality, which means that appeal can even take 4 or 5 years without being heard. And then Chief is going to become a fait accompli. But now, what therefore me this means is that if the legal options is being muddled up and being made a mockery of, is there anything else that can be done? My answer to that is yes, there is. I will be speaking to some of you later, Tony Gashoka, Ndegwa, Honorable Kioni, and Anthony, about some of the issues that can be done, but I can mention two. I think for me, it is important to remember that the Kenya government, because we do not have resources like Nigeria, where you make a lot of money from oil or for minerals, it means that we finance the Kenya government. If you finance government, you have a lot of power that you can exercise against government to bring good behavior. And there are two things that can be done. Against government itself, there is a lot of discretional expenditure that we engage with every day to be able, for the government to be able to survive. The government of Kenya, from an IMF perspective, every time you need money, you add the price of fuel, petroleum. You add the price of fuel, petroleum, because it is easy. If you want to collect 10 billion, you can calculate it to the cent. That this being the consumption, you can easily get 10 billion in a week's time. So that's a weak point for me. And it's a weak point for the simple reason. If you spend about 10,000 shillings by way of fuel every week, if you decided to use 3,000, you can be able to say that you are denying the government of Kenya through personal boycott a lot of money by way of taxation. Therefore, we have by the instrument of boycott is one that can work incredibly well in a country like Kenya, where government does not collect money from mineral wealth, like some governments in Angola and Nigeria. Issue number two, with regard now to SHIF, is Safaricom. Safaricom is the true participant in terms of asset and infrastructure. Safaricom in the SHIF deal will provide infrastructure, but it is not Safaricom that is making money. Safaricom has just been forced into this deal. But we can stop Safaricom. How can we stop Safaricom? Safaricom and Tony Gashoka, this goes to you. We can be able to give a notice to Safaricom of boycott that 14 days, if you do not pull out of SHIF, we are not going to say that we shall not be able to disconnect Safaricom because it's a major provider. But it is within our power to say, my two Safaricom lines will now henceforth be used for the purpose of receiving calls, because it is the number that people know out there. But I will not call. As long as I'm not calling using my Safaricom lines, Safaricom does not make money. Money transfer, you can shift that business to somebody else. Therefore, Safaricom is vulnerable. We should get a way for Safaricom to opt out of SHIF. If they don't, we bring them to their knees. That is the way South Africa, the apartheid in South Africa, was brought to their knees. So for me, until you have been able to use the instrument of boycott to bring good behavior in Kenya, we cannot give up because the police are always on the street, preventing anybody from having any demonstration. The most powerful weapon for weak, poor governments like Kenya's is the economic one. You sustain the government. If you use 10,000 for fuel, you at least help Nabi with 5,000 shillings to survive and to create the dictatorship and to pay the people who are abducting other people. So we have a lot of power that we are yet to use. It is a choice, and the issue is to organize and see how some of good behavior and good conduct can be brought about in Kenya. Thank you very much, Mweru. I thank you, everyone. I'll stay on for 10 minutes.
Thank you. Mweru, before you circulate the mic, I want to request Councillor Ndegwa and Honorable Kioni to stay on for just the same 15 minutes so that the other speakers talk, and I would like you guys to make it brief so that on the closing remarks, the main speakers, that is Honorable Kioni, Ndegwa Njiro, Senior Councillor Kibe Muigai and Tony Gashoka, can give their closing remarks and we can continue maybe for another few minutes. Mweru, the mic is yours.
Yeah, Bondo, please proceed for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mweru. Thank you, Anthony. Good evening, everybody. Man, to be just very brief. This issue of privatization of JKA. First of all, it's a very risky thing, giving on our only airport to a foreigner. And why are we being forced? Even why is it taking very short time? Why are we being pushed to privatize the JKA? It seems the government has got some upper hand, or somebody else is going to benefit
from it as concerned with the way they are pushing it so fast. Then the issue of sheep. You know, the only problem with Kenyans is that we forget so fast. And for a government to pass its own bad agenda, they have to bring another agenda. Like, look now, they are bringing the issue of Gachagua so as to confuse us to this thing. Look at how CBC there was a very big outcry in 2022 when this government was coming in about CBC, and we.
Well, did I lose Bondo?
Yeah, it looks like we lost him. Can we hear from KOT, then Mount Kilimanjaro, then the real Joe?
Okay. Meru, confirm if you can hear me clearly.
Go on, KOT.
Okay, nice. So, guys, thank you so much for hosting this space, Anthony and Meru. And first of all, I can see the likes of Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. They are here, the current opposition leader. And of course, personally, I don't want to address Honorable Jeremiah in a disrespectful way, but I want to tell him that the current opposition leader, led by him and the principals, they're the one who have really let us down, because they've never been speaking about the issues that are happening in our country until when we, the young people, we went to the streets. And of course, some of the people whom we went to the street with are currently decomposing out there. And so it's very, very, very sad that the opposition leader really let us down, the larger Azimio, led by the guy Raila Odinga. And so when Jeremiah Kioni, you're saying that when we have an issue and the young people are coming out in large numbers, you people will also be coming out there, then I really want to request you, Mheshimiwa, that you honor the promise. When we go out there, even if we say tomorrow we are going out there to demand that the government do whatever we want to do in accordance with the constitution, don't just sit back in your vehicles and in your offices as you watch us dying out there. Kindly join us. Anyway, guys, we have a lot of issues that are really affecting us as a nation. Today I was going through the Auditor General's report of the approved procurement for the financial year 2023-2024. And I was so shocked that in the procurement that was approved, there is this item number 282. You guys can go to the website and confirm, where the government of the Republic of Kenya, led by one William Samoei Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua, they are procuring a suit which comprises the jacket, trousers, and a shirt at 2,400,500 shillings. One item, confirm with me, item number 283. But we just here, we are not even going through those procurement details. We are not going through about the Auditor General's report. So when we come here to speak, we just speak from a blank, from not identifying these issues. And
KOT.
So, yes.
I don't want to sound like I'm cutting you off, my fellow comrade.
Okay.
But I am trying to organize a space with Bonnie.
Okay.
You know Bonnie, the one who does all those financial statements?
Yeah, sure.
For all counties and the Republic. I'm trying to organize a space with him so that we can look at all of them collectively.
Okay. But so that's what actually it caught my attention when I went through that report. But guys, remember the issue we are having at hand. Currently, the Adani issue. This Adani issue is proceeding to some final stages, if I'm not wrong, because we identified this problem, but we never came up with a solution. And that's why today, even Murkomen is proposing that, Murkomen is the one who was the CS for transport when Adani was privatized. I mean, when our airport was privatized and it was the privatization, the tender was given to Adani. And even today, he's proposing that our stadiums in Kenya, they should be privatized. And of course, the private investors to come in and and run matters and the activities and even maintaining the stadiums. So if you are going to have a problem but not providing a solution, we keep quiet just to come maybe on these spaces and run and talk, then we go and sit back at home, then this government, of course, they are going to do whatever they can, because they know that Kenyans are people who can identify a problem, but they cannot follow up that problem and and of course offer a solution. And that's why the likes of Murkomen, they are proposing that we have this privatization of the stadiums. So guys, I think we should act just as Honorable Jeremiah said, that we need to go to the streets there and they will join us. So I came here to talk about that issue of the stadium and what I saw in the Auditor General's report, and of course to let Honorable Jeremiah know that the opposition of this country led by Raila Odinga venye alikuwa, but of course this is in the government, so we are now having Stephen Musyoka, the likes of Jeremiah and Wamalwa. You guys have been letting us down, and of course we want to win your trust. We want you guys to win our trust, so that whenever we call upon this mandamano out there in accordance with the constitution under Article 37, you guys also turn up in large numbers, because we just don't want to see you in those offices, in those vehicles. Then after something has happened, most of these young people have died. That's when you come out to talk about it, but you are not condemning it in the streets. So thank you, Anthony. That's what I had to say.
Thank you, KOT. Before Ndegwa and Akibe and Honorable Ken respond to that, I want to make it very clear, and I want to be very open, that I am in communication with Wakili Ndegwa, Honorable Kioni, Eugene Wamalwa, and we are trying to build this team of the Gen Z, the Gen Zote, and the Azimio opposition, so that we become one big team, because teamwork is what will get us over the line. So, Muero, I think we are remaining one person, two people, then we get the closing remarks.
Yeah, we have Mount Kilimanjaro.
Thank you so much, the conveners and the head panelists, that is Wakili Ndegwa, there's Senior Counsel Kibe, Wakili Mheshimiwa Kioni. Mine is a very brief one. First of all, I'm going to pick up on what Anthony is just saying, because I think this also needs to be cascaded and also, broadcasted. That I came across Kenya You Want on Telegram. I think that there's a very good organization on that, and keep doing that, and we should improve on that. My point is going to be borrowed from what Omar said previously. And my question Omar Farah, and my question goes to Wakili Ndegwa and also Wakili Kibe, but also to even Mheshimiwa Kioni, because looking at the Adani case, number one, the framework is PPP. The model is EPCF, that is engineering, procurement, construction, and financing. If we look at the component, if we look at the structure of that, I think that is what Adani has been using in cohort with the government to justify, their PPIP. Omar Farah made this proposition of there being, a Kenyan-led solution on the financing aspect, actually, which I want to ask Wakili Ndegwa and also Wakili Kibe whether there is provision in law for Kenyans to more or less set up like an SPV to just make sure that they can, participate in such ventures. And whether, people like Mheshimiwa Kioni can have that passed in legislature, whereby, it can be in law, whereby Kenyans are actually mandated or have that provision of being mandated to make sure that they can give their input financially in such projects. Because if we have rogue governments coming into place like what we have right now, they can use such opportunities to justify some of these bad deals. I'm not going to say much about that, but I think that was a very good, proposition from Omar Farah. And this being point blank, whereby point blank is the space where more or less is a solution-led, space, which I think I just wanted to give that thought. Thank you, guys. I learned.
Can you hear me, Mweru? Can you hear me, Anthony?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Proceed.
Okay, thank you for the mic. Actually, I'm actually timing myself for the 3 minutes, but I'm gonna start with this. I'm not gonna say so much about Adani. I think most of you have already spoken so well about Adani, but it is so sad that we have to give our airport for 30 years to Adani in an exchange of 238 billion. What is 238 billion in a country that we have admitted? In fact, the Prime Cabinet Secretary admitted that we are losing roughly 2 billion a day on corruption. A year, it's about 680 billion. And we are saying we cannot get 238 billion to renovate our airport. It is sickening. It is sad. And we should never even compare ourselves to Rwanda because they acquired the airport via PP. You cannot compare Kenya to Rwanda. Don't ever do that. Having said that, I have a particular problem with the leadership that we have always brought in power. I mean, we've taken chapter 6 of our constitution very lightly. It is a chapter that we don't even look into. This chapter that talks about in leadership and integrity, I think we need to exercise that chapter to the fullest, because some of these leaders that we've given responsibility, it is their responsibility as articulated in that chapter. It requires them to respect the people. Do they respect the people? They don't. We still elect them. We need to be very selfish in our choices of leaders moving forward. I would not really want to blame anybody, those who voted for this mad regime, this mad guy. Don't blame yourself. I mean, you know what you've seen. At least you can see for yourself what is happening. You are experiencing and you are seeing where our country is being taken. But moving forward, I expect that we are able to make the right decisions moving forward. Because in most of these things, if we had a proper parliament set up and performing their roles, we could be having proper legislation. I mean, we should not be seeing some of these things happening right in front of our eyes. Because right now the people are acting like the parliament, acting like the members of parliament, trying to raise issues that they are supposed to raise themselves. Why are we paying them salaries? Okay? And you're seeing right now complaints about impeachment of Gachagua. I mean, he should be impeached. He should have been impeached kitambo. The guy came into power and started talking about shares, just against our constitution that talks about unity, respecting our diversity. We need to respect that. So the most important thing moving forward, we need to take chapter 6 seriously so that we can get a good breed of leaders. And let's get this fallacy out of our head that there's something like opposition. There's no opposition. Opposition is the people. There's no such thing as opposition in our country. It is a political narrative. We, the people, whenever we see wrongs, that is the opposition. Whatever we want, that is the opposition. So thank you very much for the mic. I'll land. I was timing myself. I will land. But we don't have any opposition. Opposition is the people whenever we have this. Thank you. Good. Thank you. Mr. Kilimanjaro.
Yes, please.
Your 3 minutes, so that now we get the closing comments.
Oh, I made my submission earlier.
Oh, thank you. Maybe I missed that. Okay. We shall take our closing comments. We shall start with Honorable Keoni Ndegwa, then Senior Counsel. And before they come, I'd like you guys to take note of what Senior Counsel said about boycotting. That is something we should really think about. So we start with Honorable Keoni.
Again, in support of taking things into our own hands, including boycotts and the rest, because if we don't do that, then we could be reduced to just people who are lamenting by the people in power. But one of the things is there's a lot that has been said about the opposition. I think it's important to say that our constitution defines opposition as those in the minority. There is minority versus majority, and it is domiciled in parliament, and all that parliament has completely failed to do, and that is why those of us who are not in parliament are trying to do the best that we can within our own abilities. There is the issue of demonstrations. I think just to mention for information that before the Gen Z demonstrations, we had Azimio demonstrations where 74 young people again were killed. During Gen Zs, we lost more than that number by far. Respectively, we kept away because we were asked by the Gen Zs to keep away. We have tried, let them now come and complete the work. We did that with a little, with quite a bit of reservation because we were aware that unless we synergize, unless we all come together and join in this exercise, not one single group will make it possible for to achieve. We'll be able to achieve what we want to achieve as a nation. So we have learned the lessons. Gen Zs have learned. We have also learned. When we are now out next time, let us accommodate each other, tolerate each other with all our deficiencies, and try and achieve something. And I have said it before, I want to repeat again. The only solution available to us is to terminate the continued management of affairs by the KK regime. We are clearly under state capture, and while there is going to be fight in courts, I think we also need to look at these other avenues, including boycott. But I'm saying we must come back to the streets. As we continue talking about Adani, I think it is important for us to remind ourselves that the deal on KPLC is done, that is sealed. It was signed before Murkomen was moved from the ministry, and also the one for Kentraco. And I think at a figure of about 639 billion, the other one at 94 billion. So when you are fighting Adani at Jomo Kenyatta, and when you want to fight it at the Ministry of Energy, it will have to be fought from different levels, because one is concluded, the other one is in the process of being concluded. On the issue of Chapter 6, what I think is the missing link, and while we are in a lot of difficulties, it's good also to appreciate that never before in the history of this country have we had Kenyans themselves engaging in the affairs of this country and calling out the oversight that we are seeing being done by Kenyans across the board. And I want to conclude by saying the missing link is our ability to go to the court, the Constitutional Court, and getting it made possible for us to know when we want to exercise the sovereign power directly, what do we need to do? It is there in the articles, not explicitly provided for, but implied. But at the point at which the court would then give us the path, every time we have an executive that goes log like this, we will then be able to call on that those provisions and move to take back power to ourselves without the kind of difficulties that we're having now. These guys are going to be lucky, because by the time we get that defined, we are likely to have they are likely to have exercised the power over us for the next 3 years or so. But once again, I want to thank everybody for the contributions. I have heard the challenges that have been thrown to us, and I have gotten ideas of what we can do going forward. But I'm available where I'm needed and within a short notice, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. Thank you for honoring the request to join us today. Degwanjiro, you are next. As Ndegwa prepares himself, Senior Counsel Kibe Moigai, you can give us your closing remarks.
By way of closing remarks, I want to say 3 things. Number 1 is to answer a question that had been asked about whether Kenyans themselves should have been given an opportunity to organize by way of an SPV or any other method to be able to get the Adani deal, to run JKIA through a company. That is a mechanism that is actually available under the law. You know, something like Steamer, something like Kenya Airways, all these, Kenya Power, Kenya Airways, and Kengen, these are companies that were privatized to ensure that you can be able to, by just selling shares, partial privatization, you can actually be able to raise whatever money was required, one, to change management, and two, to raise the resources while this property remaining in the hands of Kenyans. Even Safaricom, it was the same thing. Safaricom was originally a public company, but today government has just a few shares in Safaricom, but everything is working okay. The problem is under the law of PPP, Public Partnership Act, what is required to be done is that you take the best interest of Kenya. The best interest of Kenya would be that if KAA is a resource that has been financed through taxpayers and loans that Kenyans are still paying, Kenyans should get the first opportunity to own it and to run it through now an arrangement in which they can be able to be the owners of it. But you cannot give it as a gift to Adani, because what Adani is getting it as a gift is definitely in exchange of corrupt money. Let us not hide our faces, the truth about what is happening. The question is it 50 billion? Is it 150 billion that state officials are exchanging with Adani to give him the deal that he's giving? But we know it's corruption 100%. Issue number two is the issue of the people's sovereignty. There is no need to beat around the bush. We can be able to write to Adani and tell Adani, the way you make notices in the newspaper, where you say caveat emptor, buyer beware. You can tell him that whoever who is president of Kenya is a citizen of Kenya with a limited mandate. To get JKIA properly, you must get the blessings of the Kenyan majority. The Kenyan majority, the Kenyan nation must view this as a legitimate deal. Because if we do not view it as a legitimate deal, then these Adani and the Asians who will come to JKIA will not be there 1 week after Ruto leaves power. So it is important we tell them in advance and in writing that you will not last there more than 7 days after Ruto leaves power. We can make that very clear. The final issue, and this is to answer the part of the question that Honorable Kioni was posing. You do not need the court to tell us or to give us permissions on how sovereign power is supposed to be exercised. We are already before the court, and it was reported today in the nation. We hire MPs to pass an impeachment against the president and his deputy. If they don't do that, under Article 1, we can be able to ask the High Court, find that violations have occurred. If they have occurred, then we have a right in a referendum to vote to remove them out of power. Remember, originally, it was during the Joyous case that I had the privilege of arguing in the year 2004 without any supporting provision in the Constitution, that the High Court said and declared that the citizens of Kenya have a right to approve the Constitution through a referendum. By the same logic, if we elect the president and parliament would not do its job to get rid of him when he fails, like they have failed, we can do that through a referendum. Thank you very much, everybody. I am grateful for this session. Let us believe in ourselves. And as Kioni has said, we have the right to start boycotting. Let us decide. Next week, will you use 10,000 for those like Kioni who use 10,000 for fuel, or do you use 5? There is nothing wrong in using a matatu occasionally to ensure that you bring this message to bear. That you misbehave, we can cut the pipe for resources to a misbehaving government. Thank you very much. Good night to everyone.